Jake Miller woke up to the sound of his rooster crowing, just like any other morning. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He stretched, got out of bed, and pulled on his boots. Living on a farm in rural Kansas meant early mornings and long days, but Jake didn't mind. It was peaceful here, far away from the noise of big cities. As he stepped outside, the cool breeze brushed against his face. His dog, Max, wagged its tail eagerly, waiting for him to throw an old tennis ball. But something felt off. Jake couldn't quite put his finger on it. The air seemed heavier than usual, almost electric. He glanced around, scanning the fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. That's when he saw it, a strange light hovering above the cornfield. At first, Jake thought it might be a drone, or maybe even a weather balloon. But as he squinted, he realized it wasn't moving like anything man-made. The light pulsed rhythmically, casting an eerie glow over the crops below. It hovered silently, almost as if it were watching him. Shaking his head, Jake muttered to himself, probably nothing. Still, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. Back inside the house, Linda, Jake's wife, was already up, making breakfast. She had the radio on, filling the kitchen with soft chatter about local news and weather updates. As she flipped pancakes, her brow furrowed. "Did you hear this?" she asked, turning up the volume. The announcer's voice grew serious. "Reports are coming in from multiple locations worldwide about unidentified flying objects descending into major cities. Authorities are urging calm while investigations are underway. Stay tuned for further updates." Linda turned to Jake, concern etched on her face. "Do you think it's true? Could it really be aliens?" Jake shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. "Who knows? People always jump to conclusions. It's probably just some new military tech or something." But deep down, he wasn't so sure. The light he'd seen earlier lingered in his mind. He decided not to mention it to Lyndon. No need to worry her unnecessarily. Instead, he grabbed a cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the fields. For once, the quiet countryside felt less comforting and more isolating. By mid-morning, the reports kept coming in. New York, Tokyo, London, all of them had sightings of massive ships appearing in the skies. Social media blew up with videos showing sleek, metallic vessels hovering effortlessly above skyscrapers. Some people cheered, thinking it was proof of extraterrestrial life. Others panicked, convinced the end of the world was near. Jake tried to focus on work, feeding the chickens and repairing a broken fence. But every time he looked up, he half expected to see another one of those lights. Around noon, his phone buzzed with texts from neighbors. "Did you see it? What do you think it means?" Everyone was talking about it. Later that afternoon, Jake spotted something else strange. A smaller object, shaped like a disc, descended slowly toward his barn. This time there was no denying what it was. It wasn't human-made. Frozen in place, Jake watched as the craft scanned the area with a bright beam of light. Then, without warning, it shot straight back up into the sky, leaving behind a patch of scorched earth where it had touched down. Jake stood there for a moment, heart pounding. Whatever these things were, they weren't friendly visitors. And if they were willing to destroy parts of his farm, what would stop them from doing worse? That night, Jake lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Linda slept soundly beside him, unaware of what he'd witnessed. Outside, the stars twinkled innocently, but Jake couldn't help wondering how many of them weren't stars at all. In Washington, D.C., Ryan Carter sat in a dimly lit conference room at the Pentagon. The air was thick with tension, and the hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Around the table, generals, scientists, and government officials exchanged worried glances. On a large screen at the front of the room, satellite images showed enormous alien ships hovering above Earth's major cities. Their sleek, metallic designs looked both beautiful and terrifying. Ryan A military strategist known for his calm demeanor under pressure leaned forward to study the images more closely. He had spent years preparing for threats, both foreign and domestic, but nothing could have prepared him for this. These weren't just unidentified objects, they were clearly advanced spacecraft, far beyond anything humanity had ever created. "We've made contact," announced General Patricia Monroe, her voice steady but firm. She pressed a button on the remote in her hand, and a recording began to play. A low, mechanical voice filled the room, speaking in perfect English. "Surrender your resources. Resistance will result in destruction." The message repeated twice before cutting off abruptly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant: an ultimatum. Ryan clenched his fists beneath the table. This wasn't diplomacy, it was domination. The aliens weren't asking for permission. They were issuing orders. Meanwhile, back in Kansas, Jake Miller couldn't stop thinking about the strange object that had landed near his barn. He hadn't told anyone, not even Linda, about what he'd seen. How could he explain something he didn't understand himself? But when he went outside the next morning, the evidence was undeniable. The scorched circle of Earth was still there, blackened and lifeless, as if all the energy had been sucked out of it. Jake decided to drive into town to see if anyone else had witnessed anything unusual. When he arrived, the local diner was buzzing with conversation. Farmers, shopkeepers, and truck drivers talked animatedly about the alien ships appearing across the globe. Some dismissed it as a hoax, while others speculated about invasions or experiments. One man claimed he'd seen a glowing craft flying low over his cattle field. Another swore he heard strange noises coming from the woods late at night. Jake stayed quiet, sipping his coffee and listening. He wanted to share what he'd seen, but something held him back. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the realization that no one would believe him anyway. Later that evening, news broke that the aliens had started making moves. Reports poured in from around the world. Power grids failing, communication systems disrupted, and unexplained disappearances in areas where the ships had appeared. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying fighter jets and mobilizing troops. But the sheer scale of the invasion left everyone feeling powerless. Back at the Pentagon, Ryan worked tirelessly with his team to devise a plan. They needed to act quickly, but every option came with risks. Attacking the ships directly might provoke retaliation, while waiting too long could give the aliens time to establish control. Ryan suggested using experimental technology developed by Dr. Emily Ross, a brilliant scientist working on electromagnetic pulse EMP weapons. If they could disable the alien ship's systems, they might stand a chance. General Monroe agreed to explore the idea, but warned Ryan not to get his hopes up. "These things are unlike anything we've ever faced," she said. "We're going into this blind." As the meeting ended, Ryan stared at the map on the wall, dotted with red markers indicating the locations of alien activity. Each dot represented lives at risk and possibly lost. He thought about his own family, safe in their suburban home miles away. Would they be okay if things escalated? Or would they become casualties of a war humanity wasn't ready to fight? That same night, Jake stood outside his house, staring up at the sky. Stars twinkled above, but now they seemed less comforting and more ominous. Somewhere out there, beings with unimaginable power were watching Earth, and, judging by their actions so far, they weren't here to make friends. The world was changing fast, and no one felt safe anymore. In Washington, D.C., Ryan Carter worked late into the night with his team at the Pentagon. The room buzzed with activity as maps, satellite images, and data filled every screen. Fighter jets were being scrambled, missile silos readied, and evacuation plans put in motion. Governments around the globe had come together under the banner of the Global Defense Initiative (GDI), led by General Patricia Monroe. For once, nations set aside their differences to face a common enemy. Dr. Emily Ross hurried into the room. carrying a laptop filled with diagrams and calculations. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Her specialty was electromagnetic pulse (EMP) technology, a weapon designed to disable electronics. If they could hit the alien ships with an EMP blast, it might disrupt their systems, long enough for humanity to strike back. But there was no guarantee it would work. The aliens' technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. "We need more time," Emily said, setting her laptop on the table. "The prototype isn't ready yet. Rushing it could mean failure." Ryan shook his head. "We don't have time. Look at the reports. Cities are already burning. People are dying. We can't wait." General Monroe stepped in, her voice firm, but calm. "Then we'll take the risk. Prepare the EMP device for deployment. Meanwhile, we'll focus on buying time." She turned to Ryan. "You're in charge of coordinating our forces. Make sure everyone knows what's at stake." As the meeting broke up, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew the odds weren't good. The aliens had superior weapons, faster ships, and who knew what else. Still, he couldn't give up, not when so many lives depended on him. Back in Kansas, Jake Miller watched the news with growing dread. Cities like New York and Tokyo were ablaze, their streets filled with chaos. Alien drones zipped through the skies, firing beams of energy that left destruction in their wake. Refugees packed highways, desperate to escape the advancing threat. Even in his quiet corner of the country, fear was spreading. That evening, Jake attended a meeting at the local church hall. Dozens of farmers, shopkeepers, and townsfolk gathered to discuss what to do. Some argued they should flee while they still could. Others insisted on staying and fighting to protect their homes. Jake listened quietly, weighing the options. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to come," said Tom Brewer, a burly mechanic with a booming voice. "If we band together, we might stand a chance." Jake nodded slowly. "Tom's right. Running won't save us if they're serious about taking over. We need to prepare." By the end of the meeting, a plan began to form. The group decided to organize a militia, gathering whatever weapons and supplies they could find. Old hunting rifles, shotguns, and makeshift explosives became their arsenal. They set up watchtowers around town and took turns patrolling the fields. It wasn't much, but it gave them a sense of control in a world spinning out of it. Linda supported Jake's decision to join the militia, though she worried constantly. "Be careful," she told him one night as he cleaned his rifle. "I don't want to lose you." "I'll be fine," Jake replied, though he didn't fully believe it himself. "We're not going down without a fight." Days passed, and the tension grew thicker. Strange occurrences continued to plague the area. Livestock went missing, crops wilted overnight, and faint hums echoed from the woods. One night, Jake and a few others ventured into the forest to investigate. What they found chilled them to the bone. Strange markings carved into trees, glowing faintly in the dark. It looked almost like a map or a warning. Word spread quickly among the militia. Whatever the aliens were doing, it wasn't random. They were planning something big. And Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his little town was about to become part of their plan. Far away, in the halls of the Pentagon, Ryan stared at the latest reports. The aliens weren't just attacking, they were probing, testing humanity's defenses. Every move they made seemed calculated, deliberate. Ryan clenched his fists. Humanity was running out of time. The first major attack came without warning. It was early morning when the aliens struck, their ships descending from the sky like vultures circling prey. In cities around the world, beams of searing energy tore through buildings, reducing them to rubble in seconds. The sound of explosions echoed across continents as power grids failed and communication networks went dark. Panic spread faster than the flames consuming urban centers. In Washington, D.C., Ryan Carter watched the chaos unfold on a bank of monitors at the Pentagon. Fighter jets scrambled to meet the invaders, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Alien drones darted through the air with unnatural speed, evading missiles and retaliating with devastating precision. Pilots radioed back frantic reports before their transmissions cut off abruptly. One by one, humanity's defenses crumbled. Captain Daniel Hayes was among the pilots sent into battle, a young man with steady hands and a calm voice. He had always believed in his training, but nothing could have prepared him for this. As he flew his jet toward an alien cruiser hovering over New York City, he felt a mix of fear and awe. The ship was enormous, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. When it fired, the beam sliced through to nearby jets, sending them spiraling to the ground in fiery plumes. Break formation. Daniel shouted into his headset, banking hard to avoid the deadly blast. His squadron scattered, trying to regroup, but the aliens kept coming. Every attempt to hit the cruiser ended in failure. Their weapons seemed useless against the ship's impenetrable shields. Back in Kansas, Jake Miller heard the distant rumble of explosions. At first, he thought it might be thunder, but then, the ground shook beneath his feet. He ran outside just in time to see a massive alien craft descending toward his town. Its underside glowed with an eerie blue light, illuminating the fields below. Smaller drones poured out of it, spreading across the area like insects swarming a hive. The militia sprang into action, taking positions behind fences, cars, and trees. They opened fire as soon as the drones came within range, but their bullets bounced harmlessly off the machine's armored shells. The drones responded with bursts of energy that knocked people off their feet and set buildings ablaze. Jake ducked behind a tractor, heart pounding, as one of the drones hovered closer. "We can't hold them off," someone shouted. "They're too strong." Jake gritted his teeth. He knew the man was right, but surrender wasn't an option. Grabbing a makeshift explosive jar filled with fuel and rigged with a fuse, he made a split-second decision. "Cover me," he yelled, sprinting toward the drone. The others hesitated, then started firing wildly to distract it, with adrenaline coursing through his veins. Jake hurled the explosive at the drone just as it turned its glowing eye toward him. The blast sent a shockwave rippling through the air, knocking him backward. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, debris rained down around him as the drone crashed to the ground. Sparking and smoking, Jake lay there, dazed but alive. His ears rang from the explosion, and his chest burned from the effort. Looking up, he saw the alien ship still hovering above the town, indifferent to the destruction it had caused. More drones descended, their mechanical worry growing louder. The fight wasn't over, not even close. Meanwhile, back at the Pentagon, Ryan received grim updates from the front lines. Cities were falling, military forces were being decimated, and civilian casualties were climbing by the thousands. The EMP weapon Dr. Emily Ross had been working on was still days away from being ready. Humanity was losing, and there was no clear path forward. General Monroe entered the room, her face pale but resolute. "We need options," she said firmly. "Anything, everything." Ryan stared at the map covered in red markers, each one representing another loss. He clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. If only they'd had more time, if only they'd been better prepared. But regret wouldn't change anything now. All they could do was keep fighting, no matter how hopeless it seemed. Far above Earth, the alien fleet continued its relentless advance. Their leader observed the carnage from aboard the mothership, analyzing data streams and calculating outcomes. To them, humanity's resistance was little more than a nuisance, a brief delay in achieving their goal, and they had no intention of stopping until Earth belonged to them. Days turned into weeks, and the world felt like it was falling apart. The alien invasion had pushed humanity to its limits. Cities lay in ruins, highways were clogged with refugees, and the air smelled of smoke and fear. In Washington, D.C., Ryan Carter sat in the dimly lit war room, staring at a map covered in red markers. Each marker represented another Lawson, another town, city, or military base that had fallen to the invaders. The GDI's efforts were failing, and morale was crumbling. Dr. Emily Ross worked tirelessly in her lab, surrounded by wires, circuits, and glowing monitors. Her hands moved quickly as she fine-tuned the EMP weapon, her mind racing faster than ever before. She knew the stakes. If the device didn't work, humanity might not survive another wave of attacks. But the pressure from government officials was relentless. They wanted results now, not days from now. "We're running out of time," General Monroe said during one of their briefings. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her frustration. "Every hour we wait, more people die." Ryan nodded, though he couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at him. He had sent soldiers into battles they couldn't win, knowing full well that odds were stacked against them. He tried to remind himself that it wasn't his fault. They were fighting an enemy far beyond their understanding, but it didn't make the weight on his shoulders any lighter. Back in Kansas, Jake Miller and the militia struggled to hold their ground. After destroying the alien drone, they thought they'd earned a small victory, but the aliens weren't deterred. More ships arrived, and the attacks grew worse. The townsfolk who hadn't fled yet lived in constant fear, hiding in basements and abandoned buildings. Supplies were running low, and hope was fading fast. One night, Jake stood guard outside the church hall, where most of the remaining townspeople had taken shelter. The fields around them were eerily quiet, bathed in pale moonlight. Max, his loyal dog, sat beside him, ears perked for any sign of danger. Jake's thoughts drifted to Linda. She had begged him to leave with her when the evacuation orders came, but he refused. Now, he wondered if he'd made the right choice. Was staying worth it if it meant losing everything? Suddenly, Max growled, snapping Jake out of his thoughts. In the distance, a faint hum grew louder. Jake gripped his rifle tightly, scanning the horizon. A group of alien drones emerged from the darkness, their glowing lights cutting through the night like search beams. Behind them, larger figures moved alien ground troops, tall and insect-like, their movements jerky yet precise. "Here they come," Jake shouted, waking the others. The militia scrambled to take positions, but they all knew they were outnumbered. This time, there would be no holding back. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Bullets ricocheted off the aliens' armor, and energy blasts tore through walls and trees. Jake fought alongside his neighbors, each shot fired, fueled by desperation. People fell around him, some wounded, others dead. Through the smoke and chaos, Jake spotted something strange, a cluster of alien machines, dragging captives toward their ship. His stomach churned as he realized what was happening. The aliens weren't just attacking, they were taking prisoners. Without thinking, Jake broke away from the fight and ran toward the captives. He recognized one of them. It was Linda. Her face was streaked with dirt, and her hands were bound, but she was alive. Jake's heart raced as he aimed his rifle at the nearest machine, firing until it collapsed. He grabbed Linda and pulled her to safety, shielding her body with his own. When the dust settled, the aliens retreated, leaving behind destruction and despair. Jake held Linda close, tears streaming down his face. She clung to him, trembling but unharmed. For a moment, they allowed themselves to feel relief, but it didn't last long. As dawn broke, Jake looked out over the wreckage of their town. Homes were reduced to rubble, crops burned to ash, and bodies lined the streets. The survivors gathered in silence, too exhausted to speak. Jake knew they couldn't stay here much longer. The aliens would return, and next time, they might not be so. Lucky Dot in Washington, D.C. Ryan stared at the latest casualty reports, his jaw clenched. The EMP weapon was almost ready, but would it be enough? Emily warned him that even if it worked, it wouldn't end the war. It would only buy them time. Time to do what? No one had an answer. The aliens had shown humanity how powerless it truly was, and yet, amidst the fear and loss, a spark of defiance remained. Jake, Ryan, and countless others refused to give up. They didn't know how to win, but they knew one thing for certain: Earth had to fight back.
The emergency meeting room beneath the White House filled with the most powerful people in human space. President Linda Carter sat at the head of the long table. Her face showed no emotion as the recording played on the main screen. Ambassador Kate Sullivan's death played out in perfect detail. Every person in the room watched their friend and colleague die at alien claws. Admiral Rick Thompson spoke first when the recording ended. "Madam President, our fleets are ready. We've been waiting for this moment for 30 years. Dr. Henry Ford adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder. "The research division has completed all preparations. Our new technologies are ready for deployment." President Carter looked around the room. These men and women had spent decades preparing for this day. They had hoped it would never come, but they had never stopped getting ready. "How long until we can begin operations?" 12 hours, Admiral Thompson replied. "Our advanced scouts reported the Zephyrian fleet movements an hour ago. They're massing for a major attack on our outer colonies." General Paul Adams leaned forward. "Our colonial militias received the activation codes 20 minutes ago. Every settlement, every mining station, every research outpost is transforming as we speak." President Carter pressed a button on her desk. The room's windows darkened, and new screens appeared on the walls. They showed dozens of human worlds across space. "Show them what they're really facing." On New Pittsburgh, factory supervisor Mary Johnson stood in the middle of what had been a cargo ship construction facility that morning. Now, automated systems were building sleek warships. The production line moved faster than any alien technology could match. Workers in protective suits guided materials that seemed to form into hull sections by themselves. "Construction time. For a destroyer?" Mary asked her assistant. 11 hours, 47 minutes, came the reply. "Cruisers take 18 hours. Battleships take 36 hours. Mary nodded. "Triple the production rate. We have orders for 5,000 ships." The scene shifted to the asteroid belt mining stations. What the galaxy saw as simple ore extraction operations revealed their true purpose. Massive weapons emerged from hollowed-out asteroids. Defensive platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment powered up for the first time in decades. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, farmer Bill Wright watched as his wheat fields split open. Beneath the crops, hidden hangars released. Fighter squadrons. The planes rose into the sky in perfect formation. Their engines made no sound, and their hulls seemed to bend light around them. Back in the meeting room, Dr. Ford activated another display. "The quantum displacement drive is operational on all first-line ships. We can now move our fleets through folded space. No more waiting weeks for hyperspace travel." "Weapon systems?" President Carter asked. "Phase torpedoes are loaded on all vessels. They ignore shields and detonate inside enemy hulls. Our new adaptive armor grows stronger under fire. The more they shoot us, the harder we become to damage." Admiral Thompson stood up. "Madam President, there's something else. Our intelligence reports suggest the Zephyrians believe they're fighting, the same humans they met 50 years ago. They have no idea how much we've advanced." "Good," President Carter said coldly. "Let them keep thinking that." On the mining world of New Texas, Foreman Joe Clark supervised the emergence of the planet's true defenses. What looked like simple mining equipment transformed into massive railguns. Power cores that had been labeled as ore processors revealed themselves as planet-scale defensive systems. "Target acquisition?" Joe asked his technical team. "We can hit ships up to 4 light minutes away," came the answer. "Reload time is 6 seconds per gun." Joe smiled grimly. "The Zephyrians won't know what hit them." The president turned to General Adams. "Ground forces? Every human colony has been preparing for this day. Our farmers and miners are actually trained soldiers. Our research stations are military command centers. The Zephyrians think they're attacking civilians. They're about to face the most prepared military force in galactic history. Dr. Ford activated one more screen. This is the crown jewel of our research, the Hammer Protocol. The display showed a weapon system unlike anything seen before. It looked like a combination of technology and something else entirely. Energy patterns flowed through crystalline structures in ways that seemed impossible. "What does it do?" President Carter asked. "It converts matter directly into energy at the quantum level. One shot can destroy a moon. We have 3 of them." Admiral Thompson checked his watch. "Madam President, the Zephyrian advance fleet will reach our outer colonies in 6 hours. They expect to find frightened civilians running for their lives. Instead, they'll find us waiting for them." President Carter stood up. "Gentlemen, ladies, humanity has been peaceful for generations because we chose to be. We offered the Zephyrians friendship because we believed in the possibility of a better galaxy." She looked at each person in the room. "They murdered our ambassador. They chose extermination over cooperation. They want war." President Carter's voice grew harder. "Give them war. Show them what happens when you threaten the human race. Show them what we've been capable of all along." Admiral Thompson saluted. "It will be our pleasure, Madam President." As the meeting ended, messages flew across human space at faster than light speeds. On every world, in every station, the same transformation was taking place. The peaceful, human civilization that aliens had known for decades was revealing its true face. Humanity had been sleeping. Now they were awake. And they were very, very angry. The Zephyrian invasion fleet was magnificent in its scale. 2,000 ships moved through space in perfect formation. War Marshal Vexathak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the display screens show human space ahead. His yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. "How many human ships defend the outer colonies?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Scans show approximately 60 vessels, War Marshal. Small escort ships and a few outdated cruisers. They're trying to evacuate civilians from the surface." Vexthak's mouth opened in what passed for a smile among his species. 60 ships against 2,000. The mammals will die quickly. 3 hours later, the Zephyrian fleet reached the Kepler defense line. Here, the humans had chosen to make their stand. Commander Lisa White stood on the bridge of the human command ship, watching enemy vessels fill her screens. Her crew moved with calm efficiency around her. "Enemy count?" she asked. 2,014 ships, Commander, mostly battle cruisers and destroyers. 47 dreadnoughts in the main formation. "Our forces?" 51 ships, Commander. Lisa nodded. The odds looked impossible from the Zephyrian perspective. They had no idea what was about to happen. "All ships prepare for engagement. Load phase torpedoes. Activate adaptive armor systems." On the Zephyrian flagship, War Marshal Vexthak watched the human ships arrange themselves in a simple defensive line. "They don't even try to run. Mammals are stupid creatures. Shall we demand surrender first, War Marshal?" "No. Kill them all. Let this be a lesson to other humans." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and missiles filled the space between the two forces. The attack was overwhelming, designed to destroy the human ships in the first volley. The energy beams struck the human vessels and seemed to disappear. The missiles exploded harmlessly against hulls that grew visibly stronger with each impact. Not a single human ship took damage. "What is this?" Vexathak roared. "Why aren't they dying?" Commander Lisa White activated her communication system. "All ships return fire. Show them what real weapons look like." The human ships fired their phase torpedoes. The weapons passed through Zephyrian shields like they didn't exist. They passed through armor plating the same way. Deep inside the enemy ships, the torpedoes detonated. The results were devastating. 50 Zephyrian ships exploded in the first 10 seconds. The aliens had never seen weapons that could ignore their defenses completely. "Impossible!" Vexthak shouted. "Our shields are the best in the galaxy." His science officer was studying the readings frantically. "War Marshal," Their weapons exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our shields can't stop them because they're not really coming through normal space." Before Vexthak could respond, space around his fleet began to twist. Reality itself seemed to fold and bend. Then, without warning, 300 more human ships appeared directly inside the Zephyrian formation. Admiral Rick Thompson's voice came across all communication channels. "Zephyrian forces, this is Admiral Thompson of the Human Defense Fleet. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally," War Marshal Vexthak snarled. "A few hundred ships think they can defeat us? Destroy them all." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved through folded space, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons fired faster than Zephyrian computers could track. Every shot found its target. The adaptive armor on human vessels grew stronger with each enemy attack. Some ships were hit hundreds of times but showed no damage at all. Meanwhile, human phase torpedoes continued to detonate inside Zephyrian hulls, bypassing every defense. On the ground, Zephyrian troops had landed on 3 human colonies. They expected to find civilians hiding in buildings. Instead, they found Sergeant Mike Davis and his enhanced infantry units waiting for them. "Contact front!" one of Mike's soldiers shouted. The Zephyrians charged forward with their traditional battle roar. Their energy rifles fired continuously as they advanced. The humans simply stood their ground. The enemy weapons struck human combat armor and bounced off harmlessly. The soldiers didn't even flinch. When the Zephyrians got close enough, Mike's unit opened fire. Human weapons seemed to know where their targets would be before they moved. Rounds curved around cover to find alien soldiers. Energy beams split into multiple shots mid-flight, hitting several enemies at once. "Fall back!" the Zephyrian ground commander ordered. "Regroup at the landing zone!" But there was nowhere to fall back to. Human forces had surrounded the entire landing zone while the aliens were advancing. Soldiers emerged from buildings, from underground tunnels, from positions that should have been impossible to reach. The Zephyrians found themselves trapped in a perfect circle of human firepower. Their weapons couldn't penetrate human armor. Their tactics meant nothing against enemies who seemed to predict every move. Back in space, the battle was already over. Of the 2,000 Zephyrian ships, fewer than 100 remained. They tried to retreat, but human vessels appeared in front of them no matter which direction they chose. War Marshal Vexthak's flagship was heavily damaged. His bridge crew was dead or dying around him. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They were weak. They were easy prey." Admiral Thompson's voice came through the damaged communication system. "We were never weak, War Marshal. We were patient. We were hoping you would choose peace." "What are you?" "We're what happens when you threaten the human race. We're what you could have had as allies. Instead, you chose to make us your enemy." The surviving Zephyrian ships limped away from the battle zone. Behind them, human vessels began rescue operations, saving alien crew members from destroyed ships. Even in victory, humanity showed mercy to their enemies. But the message was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. The peaceful farmers and traders they thought they knew had revealed themselves as the most advanced military force in known space. War Marshal Vexthak's retreat was being tracked by sensors he couldn't detect. Human forces followed him through space. He thought was empty. The hunt had begun, and humanity was very good at hunting.